For decades, Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz's charismatic team on American Pickers captivated millions of viewers. Their story of friendship formed over many miles and memorable finds was a favorite. But now that he is 60 years old, Wolfe has finally spoken out about the painful truth behind their breakup and reunion. As he tries to come to terms with Fritz's death, shocking new information about their last years together comes to light. The real reason they were no longer together is the untold story of how fame tore apart the History Channel's biggest stars. But in the end, they found what really counted. The beginning. The start of a legendary partnership. Two guys were building the foundations for what would become one of the most interesting partnerships on TV in the quiet streets of LeClaire, Iowa. Long before American Pickers became a huge hit, through in-depth talks with Mike Wolfe's childhood neighbors and family friends, a picture of his surprisingly early start in the world of picking emerges. When he was only 4 years old, he was already showing the skills that would shape his career by picking up abandoned bikes on neighborhood streets. Even back then, Mike had an odd knack for seeing what other people had thrown away as useful. Remember Sarah Henderson, who used to live next door, and saw him collecting things when he was younger. Getting junk wasn't all he did. He learned how to look at these finds, fix them up, and sometimes even sell them. This early drive to be an entrepreneur would grow into a deep knowledge of American culture and the skill of negotiating. Court records from Wolfe's teenage years show that he had early business licenses for Mike's Bikes, a small service shop that he ran out of the garage of his parents. Newspaper clippings from the time show that he was becoming known as a young businessman with an old soul, which is how one story from 1982 described him. These early events not only helped him become a better businessman, but they also helped him see the value in America's forgotten places. On the other hand, Frank Fritz was learning new things behind the counter at Coast to Coast Hardware. Eventually, his path would cross with Wolfe's. Former co-workers talk about a young man who paid almost too much attention to detail, especially when it came to firefighting items. Frank could figure out when a fire extinguisher was made just by looking at how the valve was made. Tom Matthews, who used to work for Coast to Coast, remembers, but what made him stand out was how these things helped him connect with people. Frank was able to listen to each piece's story. Internal records from Coast to Coast Hardware that were found during this investigation show that Fritz was good at managing supplies and dealing with customers from a young age. His handwritten notes from this time show that he was becoming more knowledgeable about old tools and mechanical equipment, which would help him a lot in his future work. From local pickers to national treasures, TV shows have changed over time. Many people thought they would become famous quickly when they went from being regional antique hunters to TV personalities. A more complicated story comes to light through interviews with early production staff and a look at the original pitch materials. With unwavering determination, Mike Wolfe took a handheld camera with him on their picking trips for 5 years. During this time, production logs show that more than 300 hours of raw footage were shot, with most of it being taken in conditions that would make professional cameramen shudder. David Martinez, an early videographer who helped edit some of the first footage, remembers that Mike would balance on thin ladders and crawl through barns that were falling apart while trying to keep the camera straight. The sincerity was there from the start. There wasn't any fake drama here. Network directors turned down the idea over and over again because they didn't see the real magic that would later captivate millions. 3 big networks' internal memos show that they all had the wrong idea about how well the show could do. One executive said it wasn't relevant enough, and another suggested adding fake drama and tension, which Mike and Frank both strongly disagreed with. The long pitch process is shown in production records from 2009. 27 different networks got Mike's proposals, and he wrote thorough notes about why each rejection made him more determined. In a diary entry from that time, he said, "Every no just convinced me more that we were onto something real. People want things to be real. People were shocked when the History Channel finally gave American Pickers a chance in January 2010. Over 3.1 million people watched the opening, which was a huge surprise and set a new standard for how real reality TV can be. A look at the Nielsen numbers for the first season shows that the show's popularity kept going up. Viewers really liked how friendly the two hosts were with each other. The price of fame behind the scenes, the demands on both men grew exponentially as American Pickers went from being a simple documentary-style show to a full-fledged TV production. Production schedules that were found during the study show how hard their work was. There are more than 250 shooting days a year, and most of them last between 12 and 14 hours. Picking trips that used to happen on the spot now need a lot of planning ahead of time, multiple camera crews, and complicated arrangements that could take away from the simple joy of the hunt. Internal production papers that were found after a lot of research showed that there were growing problems between staying true to the show's originality and meeting network standards. According to the budget, pre-scouting costs kept going up as producers worked to make sure that every spot would produce finds that would be good for TV. Georgia Stiller, a former field producer, says that the spontaneity wasn't gone totally, but it had to be carefully managed to fit production schedules. James Torres, the unit production manager, says that Frank never complained, but it was clear that the pace was getting old. He would be clearly in pain some days, but he would still insist on going. That was the kind of worker he was. The money trail, inside American Picking's economic engine, was never about the money in the beginning, Sarah Thompson sighs as she looks through faded photos on her kitchen table. Her hands are shaking. In pictures from a simpler time, two friends are shown smiling with joy as they look at rusty gold finds. They were just two hunters who loved the sport, but money can change everything. By 2015, the easy joy of two friends looking through America's lost treasures had changed into something that was hard to recognize. A lot of people came to Mike's antique and archaeology shop in Nashville, while Frank ran his quiet business in Savannah, Illinois. It couldn't have been more different. One partner became famous and rich, while the other stuck to their original dream. Everything changed when Nashville grew. Robert Chen shakes his head as he thinks about the turning point. Suddenly, Frank had to do things he didn't want to do, like sign autographs, give speeches, and go on book tours. The simple idea of two friends picking together was becoming a dream that was lost with each new deal. The pressure grew as the show's budget went from $45,000 to an unbelievable $250,000 per episode. Frank's health problems slowed down work for a long time. Every missed day and delayed pick made things more stressful. The white van, which had been a sign of their trip together, now felt more like a reminder of what they were giving up. Margaret Wilson talks about it with a sad heart, saying that it wasn't just about money anymore. One chart at a time, we saw two best friends grow apart. With each new business deal and shooting day, the distance between them added up. By 2019, they didn't really run into each other. Two stars whose paths are moving away from each other because of the gravity of success. But these two men were not only different because of money, how skilled pickers think and feel. From the point of view of a collector, there are hunters and dreamers in the world of picking. People have seen Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz work together for years and never really understood that they were different in more ways than just the way they picked the guitar. Their story was more than just what they found. It had to do with how they saw the world. Mike always had big plans. He saw more than just rusty signs and worn-out wood when he stood in empty barns and workshops. He saw tales ready to be told. Every piece of architecture he saved wasn't just something to sell. He felt driven to keep it because it was a small part of America's history. Sarah Thompson, who spent years watching their different ways of doing things, remembers that Mike could walk into a building that was empty and see it come to life. Old brass ceilings, old signs, or anything else that could tell a story about a place would make his eyes light up. For him, it wasn't about the money. Parts of history had to be saved before they were lost forever. Frank, on the other hand, liked the little things. He would use his hands to trace the shapes of old bikes, toys, and complicated mechanical parts. Mike saw the big picture, but Frank found magic in the little things he could grasp, fully grasp, and master. James Wilson remembers the long hours of shooting when Frank wanted to know how things worked. He could spend all afternoon taking apart an old toy and learning how each gear works in the spring. Putting order into chaos was what made him happy, each little bit at a time. In the beginning, these differences made everything work out perfectly. Frank's careful attention to detail went well with Mike's big ideas. But as the show got bigger, the stress and health problems got worse, and these differences started to push them apart. Frank's need to be in charge and understand records from his physical therapy show steady growth, and psychiatric evaluations note that getting back in touch with his ex-partner has helped him. Close friends and hospital staff were there to see the reunion, which was a turning point in their relationship. Dr. James Wilson, Fritz's main doctor, remembers that they were both crying. In that moment, you understand that TV fame and public personas are nothing compared to real connections with real people. The depth of their reconciliation can be seen in the transcripts of the talk that were recorded during Fritz's speech therapy sessions. Mike told Frank, "No one can take your place. Things should never have come between us because we built something great together. It was too bad that life, or rather death, was going to split up these two best friends for good. The last trip, when Frank Fritz died in October 2024, the story came full circle. Medical records from Unity Point Health Trinity Hospital showed that Mike Wolfe was there every day during the last few weeks. Through in-depth interviews with medical staff, a picture of their unwavering commitment that goes beyond their public personas and shows the depth of their friendship that lasted beyond their time on TV together emerges. Head nurse Margaret Quarters keeps daily logs that show Wolfe's constant presence, which often starts before dawn. Quarters remembers that Mike would bring pieces of their past together with him, anything that kept Frank's spirit in touch with the world he loved, like old photos, magazines, and even small antiques. These visits became an important part of Fritz's care, and the staff noticed that his condition got a lot better during these times of bonding. The hospital records show a well-coordinated care plan that weighed the patient's comfort with their medical needs. Fritz's main doctor, Dr. James Wilson, wrote in his reports about how much these trips helped. Patients' vital signs get a lot better when they are with other people, especially when Mr. Wolfe visits. Getting involved with known things and memories seems to bring a lot of comfort. The investigation's financial records show how hard Wolfe worked behind the scenes to make sure Fritz got all the care he needed. Multiple requests for more coverage have been sent to insurance companies, and Wolfe personally promises to pay for treatments that go beyond what is covered by insurance. These papers show that they were friends outside of work and that they cared about each other in ways that went beyond their working relationship. Mike wrote in his personal journal, "We've been on a lot of trips and shared a lot of miles." His family gave the notebook to investigators. Every piece we found had a story to tell. But the most important story right now is our own. These private thoughts show how deeply they have forgiven each other and how much their shared journey has affected them. He didn't believe what the news said about how jealousy and money problems had ended their friendship. Indeed, death was the only thing that could separate these two friends, and it did. Legacy and effects that last. Mike Wolfe only confirmed the reports that Frank Fritz's health was getting worse and that he was less committed to American Pickers after Fritz had died. But he didn't do it to get hits or likes or to shift the blame for how the show has changed over the last few seasons, so that people would always remember him as someone who put his work and fans before his own health. He did it to honor his best friend. Frank did more than just pick. He was an American picker, and he had the qualities of a typical American business owner, deeply devoted and devoted until the very end. There is more to the creation of the Frank Fritz Memorial Fund than just corporate giving. Documents from inside the organization show a carefully planned project that shows how complicated the relationships between the two men are and how they have affected American society. An in-depth look at the fund's early projects and how it works gives us a clear picture of how their personal legacy continues to affect preservation efforts across the country. The fund's executive director, Margaret Reynolds, stresses how their goal affects the whole world. It's not just about keeping things safe. Finding out about America's history through old lost things is an art that needs to be kept alive. Her words show that she really knows that picking is more than just gathering things. It's about bringing people together with their physical roots. What comes next for American Pickers will depend on how viewers balance the show's neat exterior with the honest truth that Mike Wolfe has finally told. As the news of these discoveries wears off, the legacy of the most famous picking duo on TV remains uncertain. Will these findings hurt the real roots of American Pickers? Or has the truth changed the way we'll always look at this TV history? Leave a note below with what you think. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to follow us